I wasn't meant to be home that night. Thursdays were always reserved for my routine meetings with business associates, late-night planning sessions that stretched into the early hours. Emma, my wife, had kissed me on the cheek before I walked out the door, wishing me a productive evening. I never imagined what she was truly up to. But that evening didn't go as planned. One of my partners had to leave due to a sudden family emergency, so we cut the meeting short. Rather than wasting the rest of the night, I figured I'd return home early. I parked without a sound and slipped inside quietly, not bothering to announce myself. The lighting inside was low, just as I had left it. Everything seemed normal until I reached the stairs. That's when I heard voices. Initially, I assumed Emma was on the phone. But then I caught a laugh, deep, confident, and eerily familiar. My heart rate spiked. I followed the sound, careful not to make a noise, barely breathing. The voices came from the living room, just beyond the hallway. I stopped, hidden in the shadows, and listened. What I heard chilled me to my core. "He's so predictable," Emma said, her tone light and almost teasing. I told him I was exhausted, and he bought it. The man replied, chuckling, "That's what makes it easy, babe. He's the steady guy, the provider. But you and I? We're actually living." I gritted my teeth. That voice, I recognized it. It was Derek, my so-called best friend. Emma gave a soft sigh. "I feel bad sometimes. But then I ask myself, what has he really done for me? He's always working late, always stuck in the same boring routine. He could never bring the excitement you do. That's why you have to go through with it," Derek murmured. "Take what you can and come with me." My vision blurred with fury. It wasn't just an affair. They were plotting together, treating me like some obstacle they needed to get past. Emma let out a small laugh. "I've already transferred most of the money into my account," she said. "He won't see it coming. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone." I froze, the weight of her words sinking in. She wasn't just being unfaithful, she was preparing to take everything I had built and vanish with him. I stepped forward, unintentionally pressing down on a loose floorboard. It creaked underfoot. Suddenly, the room went quiet. Emma's head snapped toward the hallway, her expression shifting instantly. Her face went pale, and her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't speak. Derek tensed, his body stiff like a startled animal sensing danger. It was the first time I'd seen Emma afraid. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. Time seemed to stand still. Emma's eyes, wide and filled with dread, stayed locked on mine. Derek stood still, his posture tight, trying to gauge the situation. My heart pounded so loudly, it drowned out my thoughts. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something far more deliberate. I took a measured step forward, the truth weighing heavily inside me. The woman I had supported for years had been quietly draining our finances, planning her escape with my best friend. And now they stood there like they had been caught in the middle of a heist. Emma spoke first, her voice shaking. "I didn't think you'd come home so early." The confidence she'd shown earlier had completely vanished. Now she sounded small, on the verge of tears. Derek, ever the smug one, tried to act unfazed. He adjusted his stance and said, "Look, man, no need to blow this out of proportion." I turned my gaze toward him, the man I used to trust, and let out a slow breath. "No need to blow this up? You're standing in my home, talking about stealing everything I have, and you think this is nothing?" He had the nerve to grin. "It was bound to happen, man. You've been too focused on work, playing the role of the provider. Emma needed more, something you couldn't offer." Emma flinched. Even she realized he'd crossed a line, but I didn't even glance at her. My attention was locked on Derek. This wasn't simply about betrayal anymore. It was about sheer disrespect. This man had been pretending to be my friend, all while helping himself to everything that belonged to me. I balled my hands into fists but kept my composure. I wasn't going to give them the chaos they likely expected. That would be too easy. Instead, I turned my focus to Emma. Her face was pale, trembling. "Did you really empty our accounts?" I asked, my voice level, each word carefully controlled. She hesitated, lips quivering. "I just moved some of the money. I was going to explain it to you." A bitter chuckle escaped me. "You were going to explain? When, exactly? Before you boarded the plane with him, or afterward?" She said nothing. The silence said everything. Derek, trying to reclaim control of the moment, grabbed his jacket and sighed. "Whatever, man. She's leaving with me. This thing? It's already done." But Emma didn't move. And that's when it hit me, she wasn't looking at me anymore. Her eyes were locked on him. And for the first time since I had walked into that room, her expression wasn't laced with fear. The air was heavy, not with anger or heartbreak, but with something far more unsettling: doubt. I almost found it laughable. Did she genuinely think he was her future? Was she really convinced that this man, someone who clearly used people, would offer her anything beyond fleeting excitement? I stepped back, giving them room. You know what? I said, voice almost indifferent. She's yours. Emma's head whipped around to face me. What? I motioned toward Derek. Go on. You made your decision, didn't you? So follow through. Derek flashed a smug grin, like he had just claimed victory. Glad you finally see it my way. He reached for Emma's hand, but she didn't move. Her hesitation was telling louder than words. Now Derek's smile faltered. Seriously. Emma's breath caught in her throat. I couldn't help but smirk. Confused now, are you? That's interesting. Just minutes ago, you were so certain. What changed? She looked between us, visibly shaken. I could practically see her thoughts spinning, trying to catch up to reality. With Derek, everything had been exciting, a secret thrill. But now? Now it was real. He was standing there, waiting for her to walk away with him, and suddenly, she didn't look so confident. Derek let out a bitter chuckle. You've got to be kidding. You're actually hesitating now? Emma said nothing. I took a step toward her. Let me guess, I said, head tilted. You were hoping I'd beg? That I'd plead with you to stay? Try to win you back. I gave a low, humorless laugh. Then you must have forgotten who you're dealing with, Emma. Her expression fell apart, and Derek, clearly frustrated, took her arm. Come on, we're leaving. But she jerked her arm free. Emma. My voice was steady, calm. You made your choice. You wanted excitement. You picked him. So go. In that moment, everything shifted. I was no longer the one being abandoned. Now, she was the one paralyzed by indecision. Derek let out another scoff, shaking his head. Unbelievable. He turned his glare on me. You just love causing problems, don't you? I raised an eyebrow. Problems? You walked into my house and schemed behind my back, and I'm the one making it complicated? Derek rolled his eyes. Whatever, man. You're going to regret this. I laughed, short and sharp. I seriously doubt that. Turning to Emma one last time, I locked eyes with her. You were so confident earlier. Tell me, where did all that certainty go? She had no reply. Derek sighed heavily. Forget this. I don't have time for your drama. He turned on his heel. I'll be in the car. Make a decision already. And just like that, he was gone. Emma stood frozen, trembling. Everything she had so carefully planned had unraveled in seconds. She had counted on a different reaction from me, maybe heartbreak, maybe desperation. But what she got was indifference. I walked past her like she was no more than a stranger. Make sure the door's locked when you leave, I said under my breath. Without another glance, I went upstairs. Because I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Not even close. That night, sleep never came. But it wasn't sorrow that kept me up. No, that emotion had disappeared the moment I overheard her and Derek mock me for being dull and predictable. What haunted me now was the sheer nerve of it all. My own wife had been preparing to betray me, empty our savings, disappear with my so-called best friend, all while playing the innocent. Now, with her world in pieces, she was stuck. I could hear her still downstairs. She hadn't left. Derek hadn't returned. Not yet. Anyway, I imagined her pacing the room, phone in hand, typing and deleting messages, trying to figure out her next move. She had spent who knows how long building this plan, only to watch it collapse in an instant. And now she was stranded in a future she never anticipated. By morning, I was clear on what I would do. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't argue. That's what she expected. No, I would be the one thing she never planned for. Unpredictable. I came downstairs composed. Calm. Emma was slumped on the couch in the same clothes from the night before. Her hair was tangled, eyes puffy, whether from sleeplessness or sheer panic, I couldn't tell. She looked up at me and paused. Can we talk? She asked softly. I gave a cold smile. Oh, now you want to talk? She flinched. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Really? So what was the plan? I'd wake up one day to an empty house and a drained account. She looked away. I wasn't going to take everything. I held up a hand to stop her. Don't bother with the details. I'm past caring. I just want to know one thing. Are you staying or are you going? That simple question seemed to rattle her. She stared at me, stunned, as though she hadn't imagined I'd be this cold, this detached. I don't know, she whispered. I arched a brow. You don't know? You were so sure last night. What happened? She bit her lip, hesitating. I thought Derek would. There it was, the truth. She had put all her faith in Derek, her big escape plan, and he had left her behind. Let me guess, I said, leaning against the wall. He bailed, right? Didn't want to deal with the mess now that it's all out in the open. Figured you were too much trouble. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head. And to think I once believed I was the dull one in this relationship. She shot me a cold look. Don't act like you're some flawless husband. You work late. You're oblivious most of the time. Honestly, you made this easy for me. I let out a tired breath and brushed my fingers through my hair. You know what? You're not wrong. I didn't make it easy. I made the mistake of trusting you. She started to respond, but something stopped her. For the first time, it seemed like she truly saw me. Not as the man who might plead or fall apart, but as someone who was done. That realization hit her harder than anything else. I stood upright and stepped away from the wall. Start packing. I want you out before the day ends. She gasped, taken aback. Wait, what? You can't just. I raised a single finger to cut her off. Actually, I can. And I will. Desperately, she grasped for any excuse. But this is my house too. I laughed, the sound sharp. Rome. I purchased this place long before we tied the knot. Your name's not on anything. Remember? You always avoided the paperwork. Her face turned pale. She had thought she held all the cards, that she could manipulate the situation to her favor. But she had overlooked one crucial detail. She had no ground to stand on. Where am I even supposed to go? She murmured, almost to herself. Not my concern, I replied firmly. You made your decision. Now deal with it. Without giving her a chance to respond, I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her in stunned silence. But that wasn't the end of it, not even close. Emma believed her scheme had fallen apart, but she had no clue just how far I was willing to take things. I didn't stay to watch the emotional fallout. I knew she'd fall apart the moment the door closed, but I had no interest in hearing apologies or watching her scramble. My mind was already racing, moving far ahead of her. As I drove across town, thoughts churned in my head faster than ever. Kicking her out was just the beginning. Emma hadn't just hurt me. She had been preparing for this for a long time, quietly manipulating accounts, plotting her exit, thinking she'd leave me financially and emotionally devastated. But now, the tables had turned. She was drifting in the chaos she had created, captainless in the storm, and I was about to ensure she didn't find her way out. My first destination was my lawyer's office. Over the years, I had made sure to keep parts of my finances separate, just in case things ever took a turn. Emma had access to a portion of the money, but never everything. Now, I was locking it all down. The moment I walked into Mr. Calloway's office, I got straight to the point. I need the divorce papers drawn up. Immediately, he leaned back in his chair, examining me thoughtfully. You're certain? I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Caught her last night planning to leave me, for my best friend. Yeah, I'm certain. His expression shifted slightly, but he didn't dig for details. That was one reason I valued him, straightforward and efficient. We can act fast, he assured me, reaching for a folder. However, if she's been misusing funds, we'll need to launch an investigation. I nodded. I want a complete audit. Every dollar she moved. And I want her to walk away with nothing. Understood, he said, handing over the necessary documents. As I scribbled my signature, I felt something change within me. This wasn't just legal procedure, it was the opening move in my response. Emma had treated this like a game. Fine. She just didn't realize how far I was willing to go to make sure she lost. When I returned home, the house was hauntingly quiet. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if she'd actually taken my words seriously and left. But then I heard the faint sound of movement from upstairs. I headed to the bedroom and found her standing motionless by the closet. A half-filled suitcase lay on the bed, untouched for some time. She wasn't packing. She was simply staring at something in her hands. It was a photo of us on our wedding day. I leaned against the doorway. Feeling sentimental? She flinched and spun around, dropping the frame. Hi. I cut her off. Don't bother with the tears. You had this whole thing mapped out, remember? She exhaled slowly. I'm not trying to argue. Good, I said as I stepped into the room. Because there's nothing left to argue about. It's finished. Her expression flickered. Was that fear? Regret? I didn't bother trying to interpret it. So where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice barely audible. I shrugged. Maybe Derek will open his door to you. She winced, her whole body tensing. Hi. That's not going to happen anymore. I let out a cold laugh. Wow, so he ghosted you? Shocking. She didn't confirm it out loud, but the way she looked at her empty hand said everything. Emma, I said, shaking my head slowly, you threw everything away for him. And now he's gone. That has to sting. Her lips trembled slightly. Hi. I raised my hand to silence her again. Nope. I'm not interested. Whatever you have to say, save it. You need to be out of this house by tonight. Don't be here when I return. Her face hardened. You can't just toss me out like this. I smirked. Actually, I can. You never signed anything. You always insisted you trusted me with the legal matters. Her expression went pale again. Yeah, I added as I picked up my keys. Big mistake. And with those final words, I turned and walked away, leaving her in that room, silent, frozen, and completely alone. Everything had only just begun. After leaving the house, I didn't drive far, just parked a few blocks away, engine off, watching the sky slowly surrender to the approaching night. The sun was slipping beneath the horizon, and the weight of what had just happened was still settling in. But instead of feeling grief or rage, an unexpected calm washed over me. It was like a fog had lifted, and for the first time in a long while, everything was clear. I felt awake, as though I'd been sleepwalking through my life without even knowing it. Back at the house, Emma was likely still pacing, trying to piece together a plan, clinging to the idea that something between us could still be salvaged. But there was nothing left to rebuild. The trust we once had been destroyed the moment I overheard her scheming with Derek. Their whispers, their plotting, it was never an accident. This wasn't a case of someone slipping up in a moment of weakness. It was meticulous, intentional, a decision made with full awareness and zero regard for me. And now, the tables had turned. She was the one left grasping for control. I glanced down at my phone. A new message had come in from my attorney. He'd begun filing the paperwork. Things were officially moving forward. There were still details to iron out regarding the bank transfers, but the process of securing my finances and protecting my future was already underway. We were scheduled to meet next week to finalize the necessary protections. This was no longer just about ending a marriage. It was about preserving everything I had built. I refused to let her manipulate the narrative or walk away with more than she deserved. I had sacrificed too much to let it all unravel because of her deception. Letting out a slow breath, I placed my phone on the passenger seat. My thoughts circled back to Emma. Would she leave tonight? Or would she try one final time to twist the situation in her favor? I knew her well. She wouldn't walk away quietly. She would make one last attempt to steer the outcome her way. I turned the key in the ignition and pointed the car toward home. It was time to see what her final move would be. When I stepped inside, the silence was unsettling. No footsteps above. No hushed conversations through a closed door. Just a deep, heavy stillness. I moved to the living room, glancing up the stairs. Her car was still outside, and I hadn't received a single message since I'd left. She was definitely still in the house, waiting, calculating. I walked into the kitchen and filled a glass with water, deliberately taking my time. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to come to me. I wasn't chasing after her anymore. A few minutes passed before I heard the faint creak of the floorboards. She appeared at the edge of the kitchen, arms folded tightly, uncertainty written across her face. Can we talk? She asked. I took a measured sip of my drink, then set the glass down. That depends. Are you planning to say something I haven't already figured out? She hesitated. I just didn't think things would come to this. One eyebrow lifted. And how exactly did you think this would all end, Emma? Were you planning to vanish with Derek, live happily ever after on my dime? Or did you expect me to turn a blind eye and welcome you back when it fell apart? She flinched at my words. That's not fair. I laughed softly, humorless. Fair? Really? You spent months deceiving me. You siphoned money, built a secret plan, and lied every step of the way. The only thing that ruined your perfect little exit was getting caught. She looked down, clearly uncomfortable, her weight shifting from one foot to the other. I never meant to hurt you like this. I studied her carefully. Maybe in some distorted way, she believed her actions had some kind of justification. But whatever her reasons, they didn't excuse the result. I'm not looking for an apology, I said at last. I just want you gone by tonight. Her eyes widened, disbelief flickering in them. What? You heard me. I crossed my arms. You made your decision. Now live with it. I could tell she wanted to argue, to buy herself more time or offer some excuse. But something in my expression must have told her it was useless. She swallowed hard and gave a slow nod. Okay. I said nothing more. There was nothing left to be said. She turned and walked away, and I let her go. Outside, The crisp air hinted at autumn's arrival, and the last traces of daylight faded from the sky. I sat alone in the dim glow of the living room, the only sound the steady ticking of the clock nearby. The house felt emptier than it ever had before, but I embraced the quiet. It marked a shift, one that placed me back in control, free from the lies and manipulation that had clouded everything. Upstairs, I could hear the dull thumps of her moving about, the sound of drawers being opened, a suitcase dragged across the floor. She was taking her time, drawing it out. I knew why. She was hoping I'd break, that I'd come upstairs, stop her, and offer some chance at reconciliation. But I wouldn't do that. I wasn't going to. I stayed right where I was, seated and unmoving, eyes locked on the dark TV screen in front of me. My reflection stared back faintly from the glossy black surface, almost like a ghost. There was nothing more left to say. I had said it all. The moment I overheard her and Derek plotting behind my back, she ceased to be the woman I believed I had married. She had already emotionally checked out of our relationship long before I uncovered the truth. What happened tonight simply made it official. A soft creak echoed from the front door as a breeze slipped through its usual gaps. The house had always made these subtle sounds, but now they carried a new weight. They no longer felt like the comforting murmurs of a shared home. Instead, they seemed like signals of a place quietly shifting, reshaping itself to belong to me once more. No more staying up late, waiting. No more anxious thoughts about her whereabouts or who she might be with. No more questioning my worth, wondering what I could have done better when, in truth, she was playing a game I didn't even know was happening. Then came the noise I'd been anticipating, the steady, rhythmic thump of suitcase wheels rolling down the stairs. I remained still, listening. Her footsteps were hesitant, gradually drawing closer until she finally appeared in the doorway. Emma stood there holding onto the handle of her suitcase. Her face was hard to read. She had changed into that coat she always wore when she wanted to feel composed and confident. But at this moment, she didn't look either. Her gaze flicked to me as she spoke in a whisper, barely audible. "So, this is it." I exhaled slowly and leaned back a bit. "Yeah, this is it." She shifted awkwardly, biting her lower lip. I still can't wrap my head around it. I tilted my head slightly. "Why not?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Because." She paused, her grip tightening on the suitcase handle. I guess I thought. Maybe there was still a chance. We could fix things. I raised a hand to stop her mid-sentence. "Emma, don't." She let out a quick breath and turned her face away. "I just didn't think it would end like this." A dry laugh escaped me. "And how exactly did you think it would end?" She swallowed hard and shook her head. "I don't know. I suppose I thought you'd try to win me back." That made me pause. Win her back? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and fixed my eyes on her. And what would I be fighting for? Emma, a marriage held together by lies? A partner ready to vanish with someone else and take everything I built? What part of that seemed worth the fight to you? She winced and dropped her gaze. I wasn't thinking straight. I rubbed a hand through my hair. "No, I think you were. You just didn't plan on being caught." Silence fell heavy between us. She didn't argue, she knew I was right. But the truth was too bitter to admit out loud. After what felt like a long pause, she looked up. Her eyes were damp, glassy. "Are you absolutely sure we can't?" My answer came instantly. "Yes, I'm completely sure." Her posture slumped slightly. She stood there for a moment, taking it all in, as if trying to capture this final image of what used to be our life together. But that life was already gone. What remained now was mine alone. She drew in a shaky breath. "Okay." I nodded and stood, making my way to the front door. I pulled it open and stepped aside without saying another word. She stood there for a beat, staring at the open doorway like it was a portal into a life she wasn't ready to face. But at last, she moved, guiding her suitcase out onto the porch. The cold air swept in, but I felt no chill. She turned back for one last look, eyes searching mine. "Goodbye." I returned a small nod. "Goodbye, Emma." And just like that, she walked down the steps, got into her car, and drove off into the night. I stayed there, motionless, watching until the red glow of her taillights vanished in the distance. The world outside was still and silent. Eventually, I turned and walked back into the house. Then, I shut the door behind me. The next morning, everything felt unfamiliar yet lighter. The house had a different energy to it. Though Emma had been gone for less than half a day, it already seemed like she had been out of my life for years. I stood by the kitchen window with a warm cup of coffee, watching the sun slowly rise over the quiet neighborhood. I had spent countless mornings in this same spot, haunted by uncertainty and wondering what I was doing wrong. But today was different. Today, my thoughts were clear. I picked up my phone and glanced at my messages. A new one had just come in from my lawyer. It read, "Everything is in motion. No issues so far. Final papers will be ready for signing soon." A faint smile touched my lips as I set the phone down. It was really happening. This was no longer just an idea or a plan. It was real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was finally taking back control. The rest of the day was spent reclaiming what was mine. I boxed up the last of Emma's forgotten things and dropped them off at a local donation center. Then, I rearranged the living room just the way I liked it. Each decision, every little change, felt like a step forward, a quiet rebuilding of my world. By evening, I found myself at the cozy cafe I loved, a hot coffee in hand, watching the world bustle around me. It was the same place I had gone after everything fell apart. This time, everything felt different. I wasn't frozen in disbelief or overwhelmed with doubts. I wasn't mentally sifting through every detail of my broken marriage, searching for answers. I was simply there, grounded, calm, fully present. A waitress passed by, offering a warm smile. "It's been some time since I last saw you." Looking up, I met her gaze and realized she was absolutely right. I had been so wrapped up in the unraveling of my relationship that I had let go of the things that used to bring me joy. I had stopped noticing the simple, everyday moments. Returning her smile, I replied, "Yeah, it really has." She gave a kind nod. "Well, it's really nice to see you again." As she turned and continued on her way, something subtle shifted inside me. It wasn't a yearning or a pang of sadness. It was a quiet sense of hope. A new beginning felt possible. I lifted my coffee cup again, took a slow sip, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Emma was a part of my history. But what came next? That belonged to me. And I was finally ready to step into it.